Kia ora koutou. We run a tighter ship than Parliament, so we shall be starting imminently. So grab a seat. It'd be wonderful to have your presence and your attention for this korero. Kia ora koutou, ko Angela Clifford toku ingoa. My name is Angela Clifford. Some of you might have seen me last night with my food farm hat on. I'm taking that hat off this morning and putting on my day job hat, which is the CEO for Eat New Zealand. That's Eat, not Air. I sometimes get that confused. That would be Luxton's previous job. So I'm Eat New Zealand, just as important. We are a not-for-profit organisation that's been around for a decade. We sit across the food system, so from our farmers and our fishers to those working in the front line of things like food waste or food insecurity, through to our chefs and tourism industry and event organisers. Our mission is that we will be instrumental in creating a future where all New Zealanders will have access to their food in a connected way. This will be food which sustains us culturally, socially, and nutritionally. It will be produced or collected in a way that supports the balance of our natural world, our land, fresh water, and ocean. Eat New Zealand has a number of activations. We have a national hui each year. The last one was held in October at AUT. We have a collective of over 100 next generation food leaders, many of which are here at the moment. So I think we've got about 20 of our kaitaki. And just to give you an example of our constituency and who we are, Chanel is one of the organisers for this festival. Josh and Max are both cooking for you at the moment. Niall took the harakiki weaving workshop yesterday. Alex is a market gardener from the Wairarapa. Fiona is working with regenerative farmers in Taranaki. Siobhan is leading the Taranaki Farmers Market and the Green School up there. Logan is in the crowd as well, and he is working on solutions that sit around micro abattoirs. And Phil from Pihi Farms is a farmer, a beef farmer here in North Canterbury. So, and that's just a few of them. There's a whole lot more. So really significant example of how we sit across the food system. We have also been working with Foundation for Arable Research on a New Zealand grown grains initiative. And we've just had a conversation about that in the Quorum Sense tent. And for the last 6 years, we've been advocating for a more balanced food system. In 2020, I was part of a leadership group pulled together by Aotearoa Circle called Manakai. And last year, or the last couple of years, we raised a petition calling for a national food strategy for Aotearoa. That petition went to the current government, and the response from them was an acknowledgement that we do need a more designed food system. But interestingly, that it should be community that leads the push. So that's why I'm here again. This year, we are establishing a platform called Vote for Kai. It's a collective of organisations that are committed to standing together in this election year so that we can collectively speak to a much larger group of voters who believe that Aotearoa is where everyone has access to healthy, culturally appropriate kai, and Te Tiriti o Waitangi is honoured in shaping our food system. When our land and ocean provides an abundance, yet too many of our people go hungry, and hunger is not inevitable, it's the result of political decisions. We think a deliberate and just design of our food system will ensure that there is kai produced in a way that sustains our environment including the welfare of our animals and the livelihoods of our producers. We're calling for courage to move beyond charity, beyond short-term fixes, and to commit to a food system where there is truly enough for all. We're just about to release a manifesto, and it calls for a just, resilient food system. So far, it's been designed by Kura Hiakai, the Zero Hunger Collective, Aotearoa Food Rescue Alliance, Vets for Animal Welfare, Health Coalition of Aotearoa, and Eat New Zealand. It also has inputs from Organics Aotearoa, Quorum Sense, Food Waste Champions, Lemongrass Productions, and the Salvation Army. It's a genuine system-wide coalition call for change. We will be reflecting back to voters through our collective networks the food system visions of our politicians, which is why we're here today. I'm really grateful for the time of three people who have extraordinarily busy lives, and it's wonderful to see you all show up, not just for this session, but for the Underground Festival. It's a collective of some of our most progressive and forward-thinking farmers and food producers in New Zealand. So, starting with the current government, we have Associate Minister Andrew Hoggart representing the coalition, the ACT Party, I guess. Just the ACT Party today, there we go. Steve Abel from the Greens and Damien O'Connor from the Labour Party. I also want to introduce my friend and journalist Gerhard Urs. Gerhard's job today is to collate and bring together what he's hearing from a journalistic perspective from the farming industry in terms of setting the scene. And then we're going to move to each of our guests and give them one question, and that will be what's your vision for the future of nature-driven, low-impact farming in New Zealand? And then if there is time for questions and answers, then we'll go to the audience. My only plea for today is I just ask for respect. If you're not respectful, I will come and find you afterwards. And I think that's probably all I need to say about that. So, Gerhard, over to you.
Thanks, Angela. I can usually speak without a mic, so this is a bit strange. I've had the privilege for the past 12 years to be able to sit with farmers at their kitchen tables and talk farming for specific stories, but the conversation always goes to other things. So, given the place where we're at with Underground, there are a couple of things that have stood out to me over the years that are statements that farmers make that I often don't see portrayed in the media just because it might not be something that's for a relevant story. So I thought I'd talk about some of those statements. And I've kind of loosely put it under 5 topics, which is food equity, health, people and land, politics, animal health, and the one I called more, because then I can just say whatever is left. So starting with food equity, there's a dairy farmer in the Waikato that I phone every couple of weeks or every couple of months just to get kind of like a temperature of what's happening in the industry and what he and his kind of farming friends think of specific topics. I don't quote them, it's just like a conversation that we've got. And I was mentioning to him 2 days ago that I've been working with groups like the Fiordland Wapiti Foundation and Deer to Care, which is a group in Southland that shoot deer, package it, and distribute the meat to people in need. And the more you get involved with that, the more you realize there's a critical need for healthy proteins amongst a lot of our communities. And as I was talking to him about that, he said when the butter price went up, whenever it went up, the massive jump a few months ago, him and his farming friends sat together and they said they'd actually want to cut the local consumer some slack on protein prices, but there's no mechanism to do that, which I found interesting because that kind of conversation often doesn't come to the fore. So yeah, just the idea of farmers feeling that they want to cut the consumers slack with protein prices. And obviously you have to bring the supermarket duopoly into this conversation, but from a farmer's perspective, he felt there was like no mechanism for him to do that. The I think most people here know who Pablo Gregorini is, who's from Lincoln, and their research is comparing kind of regenerative or health-based farming systems to traditional systems. And what they found is that healthier soils means healthier pastures or crops, means healthier animals, means healthier milk and meat, and in the end means healthier people. And they've measured all this. It's not an idea that's up in the air. They take certain markers. In the end, they draw blood from people, and they see that all these markers stack up. And that's really like this health and people topic that's in the industry, but I don't know if that's on the political sphere or talked about politically so much. But then what someone said to me yesterday was that they get premiums for their sustainability credentials. And those sustainability credentials are really how they treat the land. So the way they treat the land and the soil in the end leads to healthier people, and they get premiums for it. But he also wondered why that's not kind of a political topic. And we know with Fonterra moving south at the moment and producing about, I think, 9.7 million kilograms of milk solids per year under their organic systems, that there's demand for like healthy produced proteins. Then the third topic, politics, is that sitting around kitchen tables, like drinking tea and eating Kit Kats with farmers, not just here, but in South Africa, in Ireland, in Canada, in the Netherlands, I've realized that farmers are much more centrist politically than, I even stereotype people, but they are much more centrist politically, and the farmers' political views are much more nuanced than often portrayed in the media. And I think just the loud voices are often not the major voices, and that's something that's really stood out to me. And farmers are really concerned about politics. Someone said to me that the Organic Act has taken 12 years to pass, and it's going to be about 18 years once it gets the final go. And they were just concerned that it's kind of just politics that stops that. Under the Labour government, I went out of my way to ask farmers two questions, and the one was their sentiment around bobby calves, and the other was so that was the one question. The other question was their sentiment around live exports. And to a person, farmers would tell me they'd rather have the ability to grow out calves and sell them into kind of the meat market instead of having to sell them as bobbies. And they just feel the system is designed for catering more for one thing, although that is definitely changing. We're seeing a lot of changes coming in on that. And one thing that really stood out to me was I was speaking to Daniel Carson from Meaty a week ago. I don't know who knows him and who doesn't, but basically Meaty is a snack from dairy beef or from bobby calves that are raised 12 months, slaughtered, and then sold into this snack market. And Daniel's been telling me how absolutely hard it is to get that off the ground in New Zealand. But he recently won a prize that was given out by the Australian dairy industry, and they took him to a Paris food fair. And they said, this is it. This is the way to kind of get that credentials and that consumer buy-in back into the dairy system. And he's now even working with a form of Australian plant to be a additive to this thing where to Meaty, where here he uses Manuka honey, and he's now pivoting to Australia because it's much easier for him, or he's kind of accepted there, and what he's doing is being seen as a solution. And I mean, animal health is a general thing, but a UK veterinarian said to me on a open farm day, and he was saying that the acceptable levels of somatic cell counts, so the acceptable somatic cell counts in milk in the UK is much lower than in New Zealand. And I just wondered, why is that? I mean, this is literally dairy country. Why is another country's kind of animal health measures better than ours? And just the last thing on the more topic, a seminal paper on glyphosate was retracted last year, December. There was a bit about it in the media, but it doesn't seem like it's it's changed everything. I've sat around tables with arable farmers on 3 continents who've said to me, the chemicals I put on the land are bad. Often they come to that conclusion once there's a health scare within their family. And then in the same vein, someone said to me last week, a professor at Lincoln, who was actually critical in setting maximum residue levels for chemicals in plants 40 years ago in the UK, said to me he feels the EPA is very agriculturally centered, which is okay, but he says for Environmental Protection Authority, it's probably not okay. So that's just kind of things that come up all the time, and it's not things that kind of big news issues often. It's just things that you hear around a table, and journalists like me don't write about it because we grow up being taught if it bleeds, it leads. So, that's like if there wasn't an explosion, you don't write about it. So you really kind of write about that, only those kinds of things. So that's a mouthful of statements. Thank you for that. I think that was more than 6 minutes 28. But yeah, over to you. Thank you so much.
Andrew, would you like to have first right of response?
So I think the question is, what is my vision for a whole range of agriculture? I guess I would simplify it down to what is my vision for agriculture, farming. Because end of the day, it's not the government that decides how you should farm, it's you who decides how you farm on your land. You're the person that knows it the best. You're the person that knows what works on your farm, what works with your systems, what's your favourite way of doing things. That's what I want to enable. So in terms of what my vision is, it's pretty simple. That people, however they want to farm, enjoy it. It's a basic, simple thing. I've found over the last decade or so, it's gotten more stressful for a lot of people. They're stressed out about all sorts of things, and compliance and paperwork is all part of that. A lot of the dialogue that goes on is part of that. And quite frankly, my vision is just get people back to enjoying what they do on a daily basis. In terms of that, it is pretty simple of what are the sensible things that you need to do on farm in terms of interacting with the government. I look at a number of things I've had to do over the years that are so duplicative that do my absolute head in. I have to input into 9 or 10 different systems how many cows I've got. Only one of those systems is any bloody use to me. The rest of them, it's just box ticking. Now, yes, you say, oh, how hard is it to write 540 10 times? That's only one field. There's always multiple fields, and actually, why can't we have systems that actually are smart, pull out of the information out of the thing that's useful for me to do all the rest of the compliance? So that's a big part of my focus, is around how do we make it smart and simple for people to just get on with farming how they want to do it. In terms of particular areas, so low input, organic farming, I think it was mentioned before about, Jared mentioned the Organic Act. I thought we had signed something this year, but we have. Yes, I thought we'd done that. So maybe they've missed the press release from government on that. But that it really is government. I view government's role as making sure that the settings are right, the definitions are right, so that if you want to say, I am this sort of farmer, there is backup for you in the market, that there is accreditation that is trusted overseas, that people say, yep, that is that sort of product. If you're not interested in any of that stuff, cool, go along. But it's not for government to tell you, you should be farming like this, and you should be farming like that. It's up to you. You're the farmer. So from us, it's a pretty simple thing. We just want to remove a lot of the barriers, allow people to farm how they want to farm, leave the marketing up to the people that are actually selling the products, rather than trying to have the government as a marketer, because there isn't a lot of marketing experience in government. It's mainly with the companies that are actually selling the products. In terms of, Gerard mentioned around micro-abattoir, or I think Angela mentioned around micro-abattoirs. So I might just, there is some work going on in that space in terms of the micro-abattoirs. We are looking at, we did some work last year that removed some of the barriers around the cost barriers on actually providing for someone that is doing low-scale production into the local trade. They were effectively having to do the same quality tests as a large abattoir, and at a so per kg of product, their testing costs are way higher than a large abattoir. So we've scaled that to size. The next thing we want to do is make sure that it is easy and simple for these people to be able to do the inspections themselves if they're suitably qualified. Problem at the moment is it costs $20,000 to do a course to learn how to be a meat inspector for only one type. You can pay $20,000 to do a pig, and $20,000 to do a sheep, $20,000 to do a beefy. Want to simplify that down, make it much cheaper so that there is the ability of farmers or small operators in the regions to be able to do some of that stuff, and then they can, provide products into their local market. There will always still, and part of the challenge as to why some farmers can't do that is, of course, food safety rules. And they're there for a reason. We need to have them in place. We've got to make sure they're not too onerous, but we can't have nothing, because then the moment people get sick, then they start screaming, why didn't the government do something? So that's kind of where it is. There's got to be some rules. There's a point to them, but we need to make sure they're as efficient and effective as possible and not over the top and not duplicative.
Kia ora, Damien O'Connor. I'm from the Labour Party. About 200 years ago, we had a few islands here with a Māori population who were getting along just fine, and we kind of came along and thought we'll change this nation. And over those 200 years, we've chopped down most of the bush, or a lot of it. We've put ryegrass and clover on the ground, and we've grown really cheap protein. And it served our ancestors well. And so we've come forward. But actually, in the 80s, when I was share milking, the manure from the shed went straight into the stream. People were chopping off cows' tails, and people were knocking bobby calves on the head because they weren't of any value. And so as we've moved forward, and change has been quite rapid, and some of it's because we've become more efficient and better able to utilise our land. We've learnt a lot more. The DDT, which I played in as a kid, has been found to be not so healthy. We're now learning about glyphosate. We've learned a lot about things that were taken for granted and well-intentioned farmers utilised for the good of the nation and themselves and their whānau. But the world moves on, and we learn about things. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. We're in a rapidly changing world. And if we fell off the planet tomorrow, no one would really notice around the wider world. There may be a few people trading our products that would have to go somewhere else, but actually the 40 million people or thereabouts that we feed could get their food from somewhere else. Because a third of the food that we produce in this world is wasted. Absolutely outrageous waste of emissions, waste of resources, waste of capital and investment. So food waste is now starting to become one of the foci for the international global food environment. And I've spoken about that on international for time and time again. And the more quickly we move on that, the better. We'll save wastage. What does this mean for New Zealand? Well, if we fell off the map, then, and no one would care, what's our point of difference and what makes us relevant in the wider world? Food security for ourselves has kind of been taken for granted, along with water, which has been taken for granted. We've learned actually we need to be a bit more careful about the allocation, the storage, and the protection of water, whether it's drinking water, irrigation water, or whatever. Another area of rapid learning. Food security, well, we've always had food down the road. Someone knows a farmer. Things get tough. You can get a sheep or you can go and catch some whitebait or do whatever. But actually, food affordability is a big issue for too many people in our country. So these are things that have kind of emerged as challenges for us as we move into the future. The question I think we should ask as food producers is, how good could we be? Because the world is looking for more sustainable systems of food production and more food security. And we have a unique environment. We're very lucky. Most of our weather is kind of moderate. It seems strange after what we've had, but compared to many other places around the world, it is a kind of a fairly moderate climate. We're seeing climate change. That's another challenge. But, it will be the most adaptable who survive, not the strongest, which comes back to where we fit in the world. We don't need GE at this point. We can continue to investigate in the labs what is going on and keep up with international science. But actually, the point of difference that we have by being non-GMO is valuable around the world. And I think that we need to consider it carefully, not ignore it, keep it to one side, but move forward and say, how else can we develop, if not branded product, Andrew's right, maybe government can't brand it, but we can set the parameters and the framework to allow people to get better value. Just called in this morning, had a coffee at Untouched World, right? Perry Drysdale has been battling for many, many years to turn wool, right, that we've been burying, it's finer wool to be fair, but wool that we've been burying into high-value products. It's taken a long time, but she's got there. We can do that with the protein that we produce in this country, and we can use the techniques that we use to help other people around the world. So my vision is New Zealand, best country for the world. Not in the world, we can't say that, but if we're trying and striving to be better and to show others how they can be better and give themselves food security, then maybe that's a vision worth having. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having us. My name's Steve Abel. I'm the Green Party guy. So we live in the cradle of nature, essentially. All human activity is bound by the earth that we depend on for our existence and which brought us into existence as a species. It is absolutely untenable for us to consider that we could be undertaking any activity that harms the viability of those natural systems on which we depend. And we find ourselves in a ludicrous situation where, among other things, the way we produce food and fibre is destroying the viable basis of life on the planet in the form of contaminating and polluting fresh water, in the form of destroying biodiversity, in the form of fueling climate change. And anyone who's a food producer or a farmer knows that you're on the front line of the direct impacts of extreme weather events, and the people right now all over the country feeling that acutely. We have to have the ability to recognise the context in which agricultural activity and farming happens. It is in the context of nature. We must be able to, as a species, because we have for 100,000 years or 1 million years of our existence, feed ourselves and clothe ourselves and house ourselves in a way that doesn't destroy the viability of nature. But we're currently not doing that, and it is a planetary problem. I am completely inspired and excited by those people, including most of you in this room, or all of you in this room, who are trying to work out how we transition to genuinely sustainable means of sustaining ourselves. The vision that we have as the Greens is that we do produce food, fibre and clothing and forestry in a way that is farm gate profitable, but that doesn't harm our fresh water, doesn't drive climate intensity, isn't cruel to animals, and doesn't destroy biodiversity. And I absolutely believe it's possible to do that. I do not believe that there's some sort of trade-off to be had where we can say, sorry, to make a buck, we're going to have to destroy a bit of nature over here. It's nonsensical. In the last 30 years, we've had a transformational change in land use in this country. We need to imagine that the next 30 years is similarly transformational. But it's not a move towards greater intensification and more polluting forms of farming, which unfortunately, certainly in the Canterbury region, you know all about. Because if you look at what's happened in the plains over the last 30 years, it has not become more sustainable. We need to think about the next 30 years being a move toward those genuinely sustainable methods of food production and farming. One of the things that I feel very passionate about here in Canterbury is this amazing natural phenomenon you have in the Canterbury aquifer. Now, people all over the world will give their right arm to have a place where you could put down a bore and drink the purest water on earth without having to treat it, without having to put chlorine in it. Yet here, the consequence of intensive dairy farming in particular in the last 30 years means that that water is now becoming contaminated with nitrate, which predominantly comes from dairy cow urine. And that is an intergenerational forfeiting of this incredible natural resource, which is a commons. It is the duty and the responsibility of legislators and lawmakers to protect the common good and the common plenty of our nation from those who may exploit it in a way that is harmful to it. So I take Andrew's point that it's not for us to tell farmers what to do, but it is for us to set the parameters within which farming is acceptable. And that's why we have explicit policy of putting a cap on synthetic nitrogen fertilizer, lowering that cap in fact, and phasing it out over time, of explicitly supporting farmers who are making transitions to more sustainable methods of farming, of explicitly supporting through a biodiversity fund farmers and landowners who are protecting biodiversity on their land, and of taking explicit action on climate so that we recognise our part in a global community who has to deal with this existential challenge for the good of not only our species, but every other species we share this planet with. And a final note on the GMO-GE thing. The Green Party is completely opposed to the current gene tech bill. We will not be supporting it. There is a place, I concur with Damien on this, for use of GMO in containment, for medical applications and for developing understanding of the science. We do support that, and we have always supported that. The Greens have always had a keep it in the lab policy. If there is a place for release of GMO organisms, it may be in the context of pest management. We had an interesting briefing from Peter Dearden yesterday, who's working on the wasp problem. He has not achieved transgenesis with wasps. He says it's exceedingly difficult. He's not making any promises that there's some GE solution there, and this is one of the foremost scientists at Otago working on the problem. So we should be very careful of thinking there's silver bullets in that pest management space with GMOs. But that's enough from me for now. Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for the amazing work you do in making this world a better place. Kia ora.
Right, it's over to you guys. Now, the interesting thing about this crowd is I can almost guarantee in this election year that this has the possibility to be the most diverse farming crowd that you're likely to sit in front of. There are different worldviews, there are different perspectives that sit across the entire political spectrum. There's something else special about this crowd as well. For each, don't look at your watch, Andrew. Sorry. For each,
buzzing at me.
for each person that's represented in this seat, they represent a network. What you're looking at is a crowd of early adopters, of influencers. So they're very unlikely to just represent one vote. So that's also an important thing to remember. So with that premise or preface, I wondered if there were any questions from the audience. Ivan?
My name is Ivan. It's more of a comment than a question. I'm a medical doctor, and my area of specialty is... Kia ora koutou. My name is Ivan, and I'm a medical doctor. My area of specialty is psychiatry, which I've just gained my qualifications last year, following which I left the hospital. because I care deeply about our health and also how we grow our food and how it affects our well-being and our environment. So I'm very inspired by the work that Angela has done and also all the great work that all of you farmers and food growers, have accomplished. And I really want to do my part because I've read the Rebalancing Our Food System report published by the Ministry of Health. So it's Ministry of Health. So in 2024, and I was really, really concerned because it revealed the cracks in both our food and health system. So our food and health systems are intertwined. So that's the reason why I'm here today, and I was here last year as well. But the last 2 years I have been the only medical doctor here. But I will press on, and I really want to include doctors into the conversation because we really need this important missing element in our whole food system. So I am making it happen. So next month in Queenstown, possibly for the very first time in New Zealand, farmers and doctors will get to sit together and learn about soil and food and how it affects our well-being. And this event has also been endorsed by the Royal New Zealand College of GPs. So GPs from all around New Zealand attending the event can gain 13 credits towards their continuing medical education. So what I'm just saying is that I'm doing my part as well to support the farmers who I love dearly in my own professional capacity. So just wanting to lift the mood a bit and to provide a different element, because I know agriculture is about environment and animals, but where does health come in? We are humans and we need to care for ourselves as well and our community.
Can I just take the opportunity to comment on, in the Otago Daily Times, there was an article and written by Mandy Bell, it may have been an agricultural journalist as well, where she's been down there, Waiwanaka, is one of many people around the country thinking like this, says that we have to connect our food systems to health. And our future as a protein and fibre producing nation should be directly connected. A step in the right direction, although I've had some debates around that, is Fonterra. Now, Fonterra is selling off the consumer business. That's the farmers will make that call. It looks as though it's going to go. They're now focusing on ingredients. If they do a good job, they will focus on ingredients for medical purposes, for aged care purposes, and whatever. So that's the theory of their strategy. And indeed, if that is pursued, then that provides, some momentum for many others. And I know Lumina Lamb is another big operation that sells the finest quality lamb protein into the finest quality restaurants for the people who want to pay a whole lot more. So that's on the basis of people who can afford. At the other, level, and maybe lower income level, we can come up with solutions that provide, I believe, with the basics of protein and fats and the requirements of people living at a low cost, but not low quality.
Would anybody else have a comment to make about the connection between food and health?
Categorically, absolutely, yeah. Who was it? Make your food your medicine and take medicine. No. Hippocrates, yeah. I should know that quote. I used to. You know the one. Eat food to get well, and yeah, that's right. And I think, one of the talks over in that grain conversation before was about the increased protein content in the grain grown with less fertiliser, which is a fascinating piece of information. I think that we have, in a sort of atomised, commercialised food production system, forgotten the original purpose for producing food in some ways. And I think we have to recall the first good is that we produce nutrition and in a way that cares for the environment and feeds people. And I think, we always talk about the 40 million people that we're feeding around the world, but we're not feeding them a full nutritious diet by any means. We're providing micro ingredients that go into confectionery and all sorts of things. If we were actually concerned with the most efficient way to produce exportable nutrition to feed human bodies, we'd be doing a lot more than just growing ryegrass and cows. and because it's one of the least efficient ways of converting energy into nutrition. Not that we shouldn't be doing some of that, but we would be doing a lot more plant-based production.
Am I allowed to disagree? So next week I'm off to actually at the Reddit Institute are having a conference in Wellington. Now they've done some really fascinating work around this argument of is it plant-based, is it animal protein? And the answer is you need both. At a global level, to feed the planet, you have to have animal agriculture and plant-based. You've got to have both to get everyone on the planet to have the nutrient levels they need, and it also comes at the lowest cost for the planet in terms of dollar amount for the consumers, is if you're having both. If you try and do it, yes, you can do it all for the planet at plant-based only, but it costs a hell of a lot more, and there is a hell of a lot more calories have to be consumed to get the nutrients, which probably isn't good for health. So I think, yeah, you don't want to. I don't think in this space you want to demonise any type of agriculture. It's quite frankly, in terms of health, simple rule I've been on for the last few months, which has helped reduce the belt notches, is don't eat anything in package, and that's helped certainly.
That's a fascinating comment, actually, Andrew, because if we look globally, there's a movement away from ultra-processed foods. And I've always thought that actually when we connect food and health in this country, we unlock a thriving food system and thriving people. So any further thoughts on ultra-processed foods and their availability in New Zealand?
Again, I don't want to be telling people what they can or can't eat. I mean, that's just a personal reflection of looking for myself, what works, and, looking at the fact that, often in the ultra-processed categories, you're getting a lot of calories dumped into it, possibly not the right balances. I think in terms... I think there's possibly changes coming up with the, what do we call it, food pyramid. I know Australia's reviewing theirs at the moment, so undoubtedly we have to do ours at the same time, seeing we share the health star rating, because it'll be a bit weird if they have something different, we have something different, and then that health star rating system doesn't align. But it is, I think it's just, to be honest, just a message people need to think about is, if you're just eating normal foods, what used to be eaten everyone's diet about 30, 40 years ago, you look at photos from back then, wasn't too many people looking like me.
Hang on a minute, sorry.
Yeah.
That's interesting to say that. But people don't have access to fresh fruit and vegetables, and so ultra-processed food is a lot cheaper than fresh fruit and vegetables. And if you live in food deserts, towns that don't have, like say Costa Rica have mandated open air food market. Sorry. Costa Rica has mandated open air food markets that are mandatory in all towns so that people can have access. So if you don't have a car, if you have 3 kids, you work 2 jobs, you don't have the choice of access to kai. And so I think that's one of the problems. If you've got really high accommodation and really low wages, that impacts your ability to buy fresh fruit and veggies and really good food. I think that's something we need to talk about as well. Kia ora.
Can I just really comment? We have this anomaly in our country that we have one of the most highly urbanised nations in the world, where the vast, a big proportion of the population live in urban areas, unlike many other countries around the world. So that means that, it's harder for those urban people to get access to fresh fruit on their doorstep. So that creates some dilemmas. Andrew's right. We need food safety systems where meat inspection is adequate, that people don't get killed with foodborne illness. So we've consolidated. The fact is that we have too few people living out in the country areas to make our fresh fruit food systems viable. Small abattoir, I think we've got to look at those, but the viability of many of those things is a struggle. And even if you talk to people at the farmers market. So it's not just one thing, it is a bit of a system.
I just There was a gentleman in a hat who had the next question, so I just wanted to give him the opportunity.
Thank you. I want to start off where Steve Abel finished, which is the GE argument. I'm not a lobbyist, I'm not a protester or anything like that. This is the first time I've ever talked publicly about this. But it was interesting that I want to direct my question towards Andrew Hoggard. About 3 days ago, ACT leader David Seymour released a reel on social media that he entitled GE Honesty in regards to genetic engineering and genetically modified organisms. He specifically stated genetic engineering and genetically modified organisms, not gene editing. He then referred to people who don't stand on his side of the argument as scientifically illiterate greenie muppets who possibly think the earth is flat and they believe that the sun is just another Greek god riding a chariot across the sky. Now, bearing in mind the people you're talking to and the position that we stand on, I'd like him to clarify that as to whether that is ACT policy to treat us like this. Up until now, I've fancied the idea that the ACT Party represent the farmers, but I'm starting to wonder whether maybe they're representing the people that are farming the farmers. China has. You were talking before about how the best thing is for farmers just to get on and do what they like doing, and that they don't need all that much government intervention. But China have a food security policy, and that states quite clearly in the small print that they don't favour GE food or food that's sourced from countries that have GE. Can I just hear your opinion on that, just so that we know where we stand at election time? Thank you.
Okay, well, David likes to say lots of exciting things. In terms of the actual policy, yes, we're in favour of GE liberalisation. And key things for us is making sure that you've got traceability systems in place so that if someone wants to use it, they can, and then you can have coexistence. Largest organic producer in the world is the United States of America. Largest GE producer in the world is the United States of America. You can have coexistence. Up until Trump came along, China imported most of its soybeans, which are pretty much all genetically modified, from the United States of America. They're now getting a whole heap of them from Argentina, which also enables which is also big in genetic modified organisms. So to say that China won't buy our products, well, they're obviously out there buying products. I think the key things is the ability to coexist. If you don't want GE on your property, that should be your choice. If I want to use it, so long as I'm not interfering in creating a marketing challenge, then that's my choice. And in terms of defining that, what we would view in the Act is a need for, okay, if we're going to approve a product, we need to understand, are there any marketing challenges, not marketing challenges, but access challenges. So it's not for the government to decide what's going to sell well and not what's not going to sell well. It's for us to go, is there going to be a problem for access for New Zealand products if we don't clearly make sure that we have differentiated where this product, wherever what is, and so that if a country says we don't want any genetic modification in the products that are coming to us, the companies that are in New Zealand that are then buying products off farmers and then selling into that country know that they are getting products from GE-free farms. That's pretty much our policy, minus David's embellishments on everything.
Good news is the Earth's round when we believe it. The questions are really sound because 99% of the global GE acreage is a tiny handful of varieties that have been produced to sell more herbicide, the Roundup Ready varieties such as the soy in Argentina and the United States, or the cotton, the canola, and the maize. We have 30 years of global evidence of what GM large-scale GM cropping does overseas. It doesn't make farmers more money. It doesn't increase yields. It has hugely increased herbicide usage. And most of the lion's share of the profits go to the people who farm the farmers, literally. Bayer, Monsanto, Syngenta, the big agri-chemical and agri-seed companies. As it has always been. Well, not as it's always been. It didn't used to be like that in about the 1930s, when the lion's share of what a farmer made at their gate went to the farmer. Now, everyone else clips the ticket before the farmer gets paid, and often the farmer doesn't get paid. That's the reality across, the so-called developed agricultural world. The idea that we can have coexistence is biologically impossible. In America, the way they achieve coexistence between organics is by requiring an ever-increasing permissible amount of contamination of the organic product with the GMO product. And that's the intention here too, is to allow the permissible contamination to go up, and then you can have some sort of marketable coexistence. It is not biological coexistence. And another thing we heard in our briefing the other day by the event hosted in Parliament by Parmjeet Palmer was talking about buffer zones. Now, buffer zones are used in agricultural production for various things, brassicas and so forth, where there's not a terrible consequence if there's a tiny bit of cross-contamination. But when you get an extreme weather event, tell me how your 20-metre, 10-metre, 200-metre buffer zone is going to stack up. When we've got unprecedented levels of wind throw, of pollen and so forth, tell me how these things work. They don't. And when we put the question in the select committee on the Gene Tech bill to Ag Research, who've developed the genetically modified ryegrass, if you release this, is it going to spread? They said there is no way of us stopping it spreading across the landscape over time. So it will become a part of the pastoral system if they release genetically modified ryegrass. Therefore, there is a choice, as Damien points out, for us as a country to choose, as we have for the last 20 years, to not adopt the GE production system, to maintain our current GMO-free producer status, in fact save a lot of complexity and drama for farmers trying to work out how to avoid the contamination. And there is no obvious commercial or ecological or food value or farmer value in us adopting the current crops that are available. And so we continue to be very sceptical of that being the right way for New Zealand to go, and that's why we oppose the release of those GMOs in terms of food production. Kia ora.
I feel like we could keep going with questions all day, and I'm hopeful that you can spear tackle any of these gentlemen on the way out, or at least slow them down, because we'd love you to stay. You're so welcome, and I'm so grateful for your time. Sorry? No, I'm not going to go there because I know what's going to happen.
No, you just tell us to be sure.
Yeah. It's also my daughter and one of our young kaitaki, Caitlin, holding up the how many minutes we've got left. And I've worked out a long time ago, never mess with the next generation. So I just wanted to end by saying that Vote for Kai is a continuing thorn in your side this year. We will pop up when you least expect us. We will sit across everything from conversations around food waste to conversations around food insecurity. We'll be talking about food, farming and the environment. We'll be asking you questions about how you see the governing of our food system. Do we need a food commissioner? Do we need a food minister? Do you understand what a food system is? There will be many moments, probably when you least like it, that will be holding your feet to the fire. But I guess that's what you signed up for. And massive respect to you all for being the people to stand up and having your feet to the fire. I just wanted to finish with what we heard from this kind of collective in this space for the manifesto for Vote for Kai. That is, we would like you to create long-term resource for extension programs and research in nature-driven farming and fishing. We want support for organic, regenerative, non-GMO producers to collaborate and grow supply across Aotearoa. We also would like preferential pricing for moving wheat from one island to another, because we believe it's an important part of New Zealand's food security. So on that note, and the 5 minutes that's been held up in front of me, I'd like to ask you all to join me and thank our presenters and our politicians and Gerhard for being with us today. Kia ora.